All right, let's jump right in. We're going to be tackling one law that's bound to get under people's skin.
Oh, yeah.
Law 12. You must piss people off.
I can see how that one might ruffle a few
It's
feathers.
definitely a conversation
I'm
starter.
kidding.
Yeah.
But there's actually a lot of depth to this idea.
Oh, absolutely. Bartlett isn't just advocating for being a jerk for the sake of it.
Right, he's talking about the importance of standing out, of being bold and defying expectations.
Yeah, and he's definitely not afraid to practice what he preaches.
How so?
Well, just look at the way he uses this whole piss people off concept in the book itself.
Oh, I see what you mean. Some of those chapter titles are pretty in your face.
Exactly. Like, stop being a bitch. Why you should fire your friends.
Whoa.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't shy away from strong language.
It's definitely attention grabbing.
That's the point. He's showing us how to cut through the noise and make people pay attention.
So it's a form of strategic controversy.
Exactly. And it's not just about grabbing headlines. It's about creating a brand that people remember.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here, but how does this actually play out in the real world?
Well, think about it. We're bombarded with information constantly, right? Ads, social media posts, articles. It's just endless.
Ugh, tell me about it. It's information overload.
Exactly. And most of it just blends into the background noise.
We become numb to it.
Exactly. So to really stand out, you need to create a reaction.
Something that jolts people out of their complacency.
Something that makes them stop and think, even if it's just for a moment.
So a little bit of controversy can actually be a good thing.
It can be, absolutely. It's about creating a brand that people have an opinion about, even if that opinion is negative.
Interesting. So it's better to be polarizing than to be ignored.
Precisely. Think
Yeah.
about some of the most successful brands out there. They all have a strong point of view.
Yeah, that's true. They stand for something even if it means alienating a portion of their potential audience.
Exactly. And that's what Bartlett is getting at. Trying to please everyone is a recipe for mediocrity.
So it's about having the courage to be different, to stand out from the crowd.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that not everyone is going to love you, and that's okay.
It's actually better than okay, right?
Yeah.
Because the people who do connect with you will connect on a much deeper level.
This is all starting to click for me now. Law 12 isn't about being a jerk. It's about being brave enough to be yourself.
To challenge the status quo and to be unapologetically you.
Exactly. And this actually reminds me of something Jane Warwan, the founder of Dermalogica, once said.
What's that?
She has this whole philosophy about pissing off 80% to turn on 20%.
Ooh, I like that. Tell me more.
Well, she basically realized early on that a brand that tries to appeal to everyone ends up appealing to no one.
It's like trying to be all things to all people. You end up being nothing to anyone.
Right. And that's why having a strong point of view, even if it's a little edgy, is so important.
It's about being memorable, even if that means being a little bit controversial.
Exactly. It's about making a statement, about standing for something, even if it ruffles a few feathers along the way.
So we've talked about the theory, but how does this piss people off principle actually work in practice?
Well, one of the most obvious examples is the whole trend of using curse words on book covers, which Bartlett actually talks about in the book.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Like, remember when Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck came out?
Oh, yeah, that was everywhere.
And it totally worked. That book became a massive bestseller.
It definitely got people talking.
Exactly. And that's the point, right? To cut through the clutter and create a reaction.
So is that the secret sauce? Just slap a swear word on your product and watch the sales roll in.
Well, it's not quite that simple.
Okay, so there's more to it than just shock value.
Right. It's about understanding the psychology behind why this tactic works.
Okay, I'm all ears.
It all comes down to this concept called semantic satiation.
Semantic what now?
It's a fancy way of saying that our brains get tired of seeing and hearing the same things over and over again.
Oh, like when you say a word too many times and it starts to sound weird?
Exactly. Our brains crave novelty. They crave something new and different.
So using a swear word is like a little wake-up call for our brains.
Precisely. It's a way of breaking through the monotony and grabbing our attention.
Makes sense. Especially when you consider how much advertising we're exposed to every day.
It's like our brains have developed a built-in ad blocker.
And a swear word is like the ultimate ad blocker disabler.
I like that analogy.
So it's not really about the swear word itself. It's about creating a disruption, a moment of surprise.
That forces people to pay attention.
Exactly. And that's the key to standing out in a crowded marketplace.
So is this the key to success then? Just find new and creative ways to piss people off?
Well, it's not quite that simple. There's a fine line between being strategically provocative and just being obnoxious.
Right, you don't want to alienate your entire audience.
Exactly. And as Bartlett points out, even emotional tactics have a shelf life.
What do you mean by that? Well, if every book cover started using curse words, it wouldn't be shocking anymore, would it?
It would just become the new normal.
Exactly. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. You have to be constantly evolving and finding new ways to be disruptive.
Okay, so it's not a magic bullet, but it's definitely a valuable tool to have in your arsenal.
Absolutely. The key is to understand the underlying principle, creating an emotional response.
And then applying it in a way that's authentic to your brand and your message.
Exactly.
Okay, this is all making a lot more sense now. But I'm still wondering, how do we know when we've gone too far? Is there a way to be provocative without alienating the wrong people?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. And that's where things start to get really interesting.
It really is. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, finding that sweet spot between being bold and being respectful.
Exactly. And it's definitely a moving target because what's considered controversial can change so much depending on the context.
Right, like what might be shocking in one industry could be totally normal in another.
Exactly. So there's no easy formula.
It's more of an art than a science, I guess.
I think that's a good way to put it. And it all starts with really understanding your audience.
Yeah, knowing who you're talking to is key.
Absolutely. You need to know their values, their pain points, what they're already tired of hearing.
So you can come up with a message that actually cuts through the noise.
Precisely. It's not just about being different for the sake of being different. It's about being different in a way that resonates with the right people.
So it's about being strategically different.
Exactly. Offering a fresh perspective, a new solution, or even just a different way of framing a familiar problem.
Okay, so we need to know our audience. What else?
Well, the next step is to really define your own values, your non-negotiables.
The things you're willing to stand for, even if it means pissing some people off.
Exactly. Because if you're going to go against the grain, you better have a damn good reason for doing it.
It can't just be about being contrarian for the sake of it.
Right. It has to come from a place of authenticity, from a deep belief in what you're saying.
So it's not just a marketing tactic, it's a philosophy of life.
I think that's a really insightful way to look at it. Bartlett isn't just talking about selling products, he's talking about building a legacy.
A legacy built on authenticity and integrity.
Exactly. And that's where the real power of this piss people off principle lies. It's not about manipulating people, it's about connecting with them on a deeper level.
By being genuine and unafraid to show your true colors.
Precisely. And you know what? Not everyone is going to like it, and that's okay.
In fact, it's more than okay, it's essential.
Because the people who do connect with you, they'll be the ones who truly get you, who resonate with your message on a deeper level.
This is all making so much sense, but I can already hear some of our listeners thinking, okay, this all sounds great in theory, but how do I actually apply this to my own life?
That's the golden question, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's what we're going to explore as we delve deeper into this whole piss people off concept.
Definitely. Because it's one thing to talk about it in the abstract, but it's another thing entirely to actually put it into practice.
Exactly, and that's where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah, that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Exactly. So where do we even begin?
Well, I think it's important to remember that this piss people off principle isn't just about being loud or aggressive.
It's not about being a jerk for the sake of being a jerk.
Right. It's about being strategic and thoughtful, about understanding why you're doing it.
So it's not just a random act of rebellion, it's a calculated move.
Exactly. And it all starts with having a clear purpose, a reason for wanting to shake things up.
So what are some examples of that? Like, how can we actually piss people off in a way that's constructive?
Well, one way is to challenge assumptions.
Assumptions about what?
About anything, like about how things should be done, about what's considered normal or acceptable.
Can you give me a concrete example?
Sure. Think about the beauty industry.
Okay, I'm listening.
For years, the prevailing beauty standard was all about being thin, white, and conventionally attractive.
Right, that was the image that was constantly being pushed on us.
Exactly. And then came brands like Dove and Aerie who dared to challenge that norm.
Oh yeah, they started featuring models of all shapes, sizes, and ethnicities.
Exactly. They basically said, screw the traditional beauty standards, we're celebrating real beauty.
And I bet that pissed off a lot of people who were invested in the old way of thinking.
It definitely did, but it also resonated with a whole new audience who were tired of seeing the same old unrealistic images.
So by challenging the status quo, they actually expanded the market.
Exactly. They created a space for people who had previously been excluded or ignored.
And that's the power of this piss people off principle. It's not just about making a statement, it's about creating real change.
Absolutely. It's about challenging the norms and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Okay, so challenging assumptions is one way to piss people off constructively. What else?
Another is to be unapologetically yourself.
I love that. It's about embracing your quirks and your individuality.
Exactly. In a world that's constantly telling us to fit in, there's something incredibly powerful about someone who's just being themselves no matter what.
It's like a breath of fresh air. It's so authentic.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, the more authentic you are, the more people will be drawn to you.
Because people can spot a phony a mile away.
Right. But they can also sense genuine passion and conviction.
So it's not about trying to be someone you're not. It's about leaning into your strengths, your uniqueness.
Precisely. And that often means being willing to embrace the things that make you different, even if they make some people uncomfortable.
This is really making me think about my own life. Like, maybe I should be a little less afraid to be myself, even if it means ruffling a few feathers.
I think that's a great idea. The world needs more people who are willing to be themselves, even if it means going against the grain.
Okay, so challenging assumptions and being unapologetically ourselves, those are two great ways to piss people off effectively. Any other tips?
One more that I think is really important: don't be afraid to ask tough questions.
Ooh, I like that. It's about challenging the status quo, making people think.
Exactly. We live in a world where it's so easy to just go along with the crowd, to avoid anything that might cause conflict or make us uncomfortable.
But that's not how we grow, right?
Exactly. To truly evolve as individuals and as a society, we need to be willing to ask tough questions, to challenge our own beliefs and the beliefs of those around us.
So it's about being curious, being open-minded, being willing to have our minds changed.
Precisely. And it's about recognizing that even the most controversial topics deserve to be discussed openly and honestly.
This is so true. I think we've all been in situations where we've wanted to speak up, but held back for fear of being judged or starting an argument.
It's a common experience, but I think it's important to remember that discomfort is often a sign of growth.
So if you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, it might be a sign that you're onto something important.
Exactly. Embrace that discomfort, lean into it, and use it as fuel to spark meaningful conversations.
I love that. All right, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
We've definitely covered a lot of ground.
This whole idea of pissing people off is so much more nuanced than I initially thought.
It really is. It's not about being a jerk. It's about being strategic, courageous, and authentic.
It's about using your voice to make a difference in the world, even if it means ruffling a few feathers along the way.
Exactly. So to wrap things up, I want to encourage all of our listeners to think about how they can apply this Law 12 to their own lives.
What are some beliefs or behaviors that might be holding you back? What are some norms or expectations that you could challenge?
What are some conversations that you've been avoiding?
It's time to step outside of your comfort zone and embrace the power of pissing people off.
In a way that's constructive, of course.
Of course. But don't be afraid to shake things up a bit, to challenge the status quo, to be your true, authentic self.
Because you never know what amazing things you might achieve when you're willing to stand out from the crowd.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the power of pissing people off. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
And maybe even a little bit motivating to go out there and make some waves.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible.